51. Do not boast. But in order to acquire humility, it is necessary also to be prudent in not speaking well of oneself. Let another praise thee, says the inspired word, and not thy own mouth, a stranger and not thy own lips. Proverbs 27:2. It is very easy for us to fall into this fault of praising ourselves until it becomes a habit, and with this habit so opposed to humility, how can we be humble? What good qualities have we of our own for which we can praise ourselves? All the good that is in us comes from God, and to Him alone we must give praise and honor. When, therefore, we praise ourselves, we are usurping glory, which is due to God alone. Even though in praising ourselves we sometimes refer all to the honor of God, it matters little. When there is no absolute necessity, it is better to abstain from self-praise. For although we refer all to the glory of God with our lips, our ingenious and subtle self-love cannot fail to appropriate it secretly. And even speaking depreciatingly of ourselves, there may lurk some hypocritical pride in our words, such as was mentioned by the sage of old when he said, "There is one that humbleth himself wickedly, and his interior is full of deceit." Ecclesiasticus 19:23. Therefore, we can never watch over ourselves enough, because there is nothing that teaches us so well to know the pride of our heart as our own words, with which we either reveal or hide the depravity of our affections. And this is the characteristic of the proud, according to Saint Bernard. One who boastfully proclaims what he is, or lies about what he is not. Let us bear in heart and mind this precious advice given by Tobias to his son. Never suffer pride to reign in thy mind or in thy words. Tobias 4:14. The words of a proud man are nauseous, whether he speaks of himself or others, and they are hated both by God and man. Therefore we should detest this vice, not only from the Christian, but also from the human standpoint. 52. Meditate on death. God has Himself given us the means of obtaining this humility of heart, in the remembrance of death and by meditation upon it. Death is the best teacher of truth, and pride, being nothing but an illusion of our heart, clings to a vanity which it does not recognize as vanity. And therefore death is the best means by which we can learn what vanity is and how to detach our hearts from it. Our self-love is wounded at the thought that we must soon die, and when we least expect it, and that with death everything comes to an end for us in this world. But at the same time, this reflection weakens and humbles our self-love. Unfortunately, we do not think of death with that seriousness which we ought to give it. If I knew for certain that I had to die within a year, I imagine that I should grow more humble from day to day at the thought that each day was bringing me closer to my death. But who can assure me that I have 1 year to live? I, who am not certain to live to the end of the day. Oh my God, true light of my soul, keep alive within me the remembrance of my death, Tell me often with thine own voice in my heart that I must die, perhaps within a year, perhaps within a month, perhaps within a week, and thus I shall remain humble. In order that the thought of death may not be unfruitful to me, excite within my soul now that knowledge and those feelings which I shall have at that last hour of my life, when the blessed taper is placed in my hands in the day of trial. Wisdom 3:18. Make me know now, as I shall know then, what vanity is, and then how can I ever be arrogant again in the face of that most certain truth? Vanity of vanities, and all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 1:2. Job was always humble, even in the days of his prosperity. My days shall be shortened, and only the grave remaineth for me. Job 17:1. 53. Judgment Day will reveal all. Another humiliating thought lies in the remembrance of the judgment to come. Saints tremble at the thought that they will be judged by a God in whose presence not even the angels are immaculate. They tremble, although they have nothing for which to be judged except their good works. And what will become of me, therefore, who am guilty of so many sins? Therefore, if I esteem myself and seek to be esteemed by others, either as more virtuous or less sinful than I really am, it is certain that such a desire can only arise from my own hypocrisy, by which I appear before the eyes of men under a false disguise, leading them to believe that I am one thing when I am really another, because I know that they cannot see what is going on in my heart. But a time will come when God will reveal my wickedness to the whole world. I will show thy nakedness to the nations, and thy shame to kingdoms. Nahum 3:5. And then I shall appear as I really am. And what will they say of me who have been deceived by my false dissemblings? O my soul, be humble and forget not that the more thou art exalted in thy own esteem, the more wilt thou be shamed and confounded at the judgment day. For then, as the prophet says, man shall be humbled. Isaiah 5:15. And only the humble will be able to glory in his exaltation. James 1:9. Remember that according to the saying of Isaiah, the day of judgment has been appointed especially to humble the proud, because the day of the Lord of hosts shall be on everyone that is proud and high-minded, and he shall be humbled. Isaiah 2:12. And thou shouldst regard as though specially directed to thyself that prophetic voice from God which says, Behold, I come against thee, O proud one, saith the Lord, the God of hosts. For thy day is come, the time of thy visitation, and the proud one shall fall. He shall fall down, and there shall be none to lift him up. Jeremiah 50:31-32. Oh, how can I indeed esteem myself more than others, when we have all to appear as criminals, miserable and naked, before God's judgment seat. So writes St. Paul. But thou, why judgest thou thy brother? Or thou, why dost thou despise thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Romans 14:10. 54. Hell is for the proud. O my soul, humble thyself in the remembrance that there is a hell, not considering it only in the abstract, nor even as a contrivance for the punishment of sinners in general, but regard it rather as a place specially prepared for thyself, and deserved by thee more than once. For there the proud will be cast headlong, and I should be there with them at this moment, eternally insulted and tormented by devils, had I not been preserved therefrom by the mercy of God. Millions of angels have been imprisoned there for having committed one sole sin of pride, and that only in thought. Oh, my soul, continue thus in thy pride and thy false self-esteem, guarding thy own susceptibilities and oblivious to the rights of others, and thou shalt be brought down to hell. That place of torment awaits thee, and there below thy pride shall indeed be humbled. Thou who delightest now in thy own proud thoughts shalt be thrust there into flames of fire. And thou who now wishest to be above all shalt then be below all. For there below thou wilt have to face a God who bears an infinite hatred of the proud and is infinitely angry with them. And as it is a truth that the humble shall be exalted in heaven, it is also a truth that the proud shall be humbled and cast down into hell. And the rich man also died. Thus writes St. Luke of a proud man who was clothed in purple and fine linen. And the rich man died. That is the end of all humanity and vanity. And he was buried in hell. Luke 16:22. That is the end of all pride. The grave is the end of man. Hell is the end of the proud. 55. Think of eternity. But above all, the thought of eternity should keep us humble. Taking it for granted that I am mistaken in practicing humility in this world and in giving place to others. I know that my mistake is small because everything below comes quickly to an end. But if I am deceiving myself by living in reckless pride, my mistake is great because it will last for all eternity. But even if I am living in humility, I must still fear because I can never be sure whether this humility, which I think I possess, is true humility or not. How much more, then, should I fear if I am living in open pride? So be it, O my soul. Satisfy all thy proud desires. Be thou esteemed, praised, and honored by the world. Possess knowledge, riches, and pleasure without adversity, without opposition, without any obstacles to trouble thee or restrain thy vicious passions. And then, I pray thee in this, to imitate the proud Nebuchadnezzar, who even in the fullness of his power thought of what should come to pass hereafter. Daniel 2:29. All is vanity that hath an end, and we are doomed to enter into that eternity which hath no end. Therefore, what will be the end of the vanity of thy pride? The most ignominious humiliations and most bitter lamentations. They will last forever and ever. On this side of the grave all things pass away, but on the other side, what will become of me? Quid futurum post haec? What future will come after this? To this I give no thought, and to speak the truth, this is the reason why I am dominated by vanity, because I give so little thought to eternity. King David was most humble of heart, because he was filled with the dread of eternity. And I meditate in the night with my own heart. Will God then cast off forever? Psalm 76:7-8. Whenever the world offers thee honor, fame, and pleasure, remember, my soul, to say within thyself, and then, remember what things have been before thee. Ecclesiasticus 41:5. How many of those who were conspicuous among the proud of this world have overcome their pride and acquired humility by one single serious thought of eternity? The words of the prophet have always been and always will be found true. And the ancient mountains were crushed to pieces. The hills of the world were bowed down by the journeys of his eternity. Habakkuk 3:6. 56. The most abominable pride. There is one kind of pride which is more abominable in the eyes of God than any other. And it is that, says Holy Writ, which belongs more especially to the poor. My soul hateth a poor man that is proud. Ecclesiasticus 25:3-4. If the pride of one who is rich in merit, talents, and virtues, treasures most precious to the soul, is displeasing to God, still more displeasing to him will it be in one who has not these same motives for pride, but who, on the contrary, has every reason to be humble. And this, I fear, is the pride of which I am guilty. I am poor in soul, without virtue or merit, full of iniquity and malice. And yet I esteem myself and love my own esteem so much that I am troubled if others do not esteem me also. I am truly a poor, proud, miserable creature, and the greater my poverty, the more my pride is detestable in the eyes of God. All this proceeds from not knowing myself. Grant, O my God, that I may say with the prophet, I am the man that see my poverty. Lamentations 3:1. Make known unto me, O Lord, mine own wretchedness, that of myself I am nothing, know nothing, and possess nothing but my sins, and deserve nothing but hell. I have received from thee many graces, lights, and inspirations, and much help. And yet with what ingratitude have I responded to thine infinite goodness? Who is more sinful, who more ungrateful, and who more wicked than I? The more thou hast done for me, the more humble I ought to be. For I shall have to render unto thee a most strict account of all thy benefits. And unto whomsoever much is given, of him much shall be required. Luke 12:48. And yet the greater thy goodness, the greater my pride. I blush with shame, and it is the knowledge of my pride that obliges me now to be humble. 57. Use afflictions to become humble. It is easier to be humble in adversity than in prosperity, and it is impossible to say how much temporal happiness influences man to be proud. They are not in the labor of men. Psalm 72:5. Thus the prophet king speaks of sinners, and adds, Therefore pride hath held them fast. Psalm 72:6. Adversity counterbalances our self-love and prevents its growth. For on the one hand it makes known our frailties to us, the more so when it is unexpected and grievous. And on the other hand, it compels us to turn our thoughts to God, implore His mercy, and humble ourselves under His hand, as did the prophet. In my affliction I called upon the Lord. Psalm 17:7. And as one sorrowful, so was I humbled. Psalm 34:14. Therefore, if we know not how to bear our tribulations with cheerfulness, let us at least endure them with patience and humility. Oh, how precious are those humiliations by which we acquire and learn to exercise humility! It is then that we ought to exclaim with the psalmist, Thou hast humbled the proud one, as one that is slain. Psalm 88:11. Or else like King Nebuchadnezzar when he came to his senses and humbly exclaimed, Therefore I do now praise and magnify and glorify the King of heaven, because them that walk in pride he is able to abase. Daniel 4:34. Afflictions are not wanting in this vale of tears, but there are few who know how to use them as a means of becoming humble. Grant of thy mercy, O my God, that I may be among those few. 58. Avoid self-flattery concerning virtue. We must not be too apt to flatter ourselves that we possess any special virtue. Our chastity may be the result of an absence of opportunities or temptations, and in like manner our patience may proceed from a phlegmatic temperament, or be dictated by worldly and not by Christian wisdom. This can be said of many other virtues in which we are liable to make the same mistake. We must study this doctrine well, that the true Christian virtues are born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. John 1:13. That is, that they are not the work either of the desires, passions, or reason of man, but proceed from God as their first principle, and return to God as their last end. This knowledge is necessary for us, so that we may not imagine ourselves to be virtuous when we are not, nor think ourselves better than others when we see them falling into some sin. We should ever learn lessons of humility from the faults of others, and say, if I had found myself in like circumstances, and had had the same temptation, perhaps I should have done worse. If God does not permit great temptations to assail me, it is because he knows my weakness, and that I should succumb to them. With eyes of compassion he sees what I am, a weak man. Wisdom 9:5. And if I do not fall into sin, it is not by my own virtue, but by God's grace. Let me therefore abide in humility, and it is to my advantage, because if in my pride I count myself greater than others, God will abandon me and suffer me to fall, and will humble me through those very things for which I wish to exalt myself. Listen to the advice of St. Augustine. I make bold to say that it is profitable for the proud to fall, in order that they may be humbled in that for which they have exalted themselves. 59. Claim no glory. Whenever it happens that we do good to the souls of others, either by instruction or good advice, or by our discourses and good example, it is then, more than at any other time, that we should consider ourselves bound to be humble for this reason, which is founded on faith and truth. God chooses things most vile, most weak, most base, and most worthy of contempt in this world, for the fulfillment of his great purposes. And this is a truth revealed by the Holy Ghost through the mouth of St. Paul. But the foolish things of the world, and the weak things of the world, and the base things of the world, and the things that are contemptible, hath God chosen. 1 Corinthians 1:27-28. Therefore it follows that if God has made me his instrument to sow good seed in the souls of others, that they may bring forth fruit unto everlasting life, which is the most wonderful work that proceeds from his mercy and omnipotence, I must in consequence count myself in truth among the vilest and most contemptible things of this world, and the base things of the world, and the things that are contemptible, and things that are not. 1 Corinthians 1:28. This is an article of faith. If a soul were to be lost through my bad example or advice, I should certainly be the author and cause of its destruction. But if a soul should be saved, either by my word or deed, I cannot attribute the glory to myself, because the salvation of that soul will have been wholly the work of God. Salvation is of the Lord. Psalm 3:9. The gifts of knowledge, wisdom, and eloquence, and even of working miracles, are graces that are called gratis date, freely given, and are sometimes even given to the wicked. Sanctifying grace alone, which is given to him who lives in humility and charity, is that which renders the soul precious in the eyes of God. But no one is sure of possessing it. 60. Heavenly glory is proportionate to earthly humility. As paradise is only for the humble, therefore in paradise everyone will have more or less glory according to his degree of humility. God has exalted Jesus Christ in glory above all, because he was the humblest of all. Being the true Son of God, he yet elected to become the most abject of all men. And after Jesus Christ, the most exalted of all was his Holy Mother, because being superior to all in her dignity as Mother of God, yet she humbled herself more than all by her profound humility. This rule, dictated by the wisdom of God, applies to all the other saints who are exalted in their glory in heaven in proportion to their humility on earth. Holy Writ says truly that humility goeth before glory. Proverbs 15:33. Job had said the same, for he that hath been humbled shall be in glory. Job 22:29. But the Savior of the world spoke more plainly still when, having shown that humility is necessary to enter the kingdom of heaven, he called unto him a little child and said, Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, he is greater in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:4. And oh, how precious humility must be when God recompenses it with eternal glory. O my soul, lift up the eyes of thy faith to paradise, and consider whether it be not best to be humble in our short existence here on earth, in order to enter with joy into the immeasurable glory of that happy eternity. For that which is at present momentary worketh for us above measure exceedingly an eternal weight of glory. 2 Corinthians 4:17. Recommend thyself with all thy heart to that God, who setteth up the humble on high. Job 5:11.